We've been doing these things called impressions of the session. We already had one earlier today, around an hour ago. We were talking with State Representative Spencer Hawks. That video will be available over at conduitnews.com. But we have a very, let's just say, special impression of the session. We have on the phone line the host of the Dave Elswick Show, Mr. Dave Elswick. Dave, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, and Mr. was my father. You just call me Dave, you know that.
All right, yeah. So Dave, I just wanted to, I'm going to give you the floor, and then we can get into specifics later. Dave Elswick, what was your impression of the session 2019?
Chances available, chances missed, chances made. I was happy in a few areas, disappointed in several areas. Was not happy with the way they dealt with financial matters, happy with what they did as far as freedom of speech and life, disappointed about what they did with guns. I just don't know some of the things that they did and why they didn't do it. Of course, it was only one person that derailed the whole thing about, the castle doctor, stand your ground. That happened with Cooper. And we'll hopefully get rid of him come next spring. But we're finding out as we go along who the true conservatives are and who the pseudo conservatives are.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. And it's definitely, we're definitely getting a lot more information, and that's good. Just in terms of, we have people voting for higher taxes. So when you said, financial things, is that what you're talking about? Are you kind of sad where everything ended up on the taxes?
Well, taxes, not cutting back on government, but expanding government. I mean, those are conservative Republican clauses that the legislature didn't deal with and didn't deal with them well. And the people that I talked to, there's a lot of people that weren't happy the way things went. Hopefully, in the next session that comes up, let's see, 19, 20, 21, I would hope that what we'll see is people who are able more to think for themselves and less for, I will do exactly as I've been told the march to do.
Yeah. You mentioned life, social issues. I mean, I thought one of the best moments of the session was the trigger bill, the anti-abortion trigger law.
Mm-hmm.
That was Senator Rapert and State Representative Bentley.
Well, I'll be honest. I mean, there's a lot of things that State Senator Rapert and I don't see eye to eye on. That is not one of them. I mean, he and I see eye to eye about life issues right on. I mean, he is one of the best pro-life politicians that I know. Mary Bentley's the same way, pro-life as well. She and I see eye to eye more with that. We see more eye to eye than probably on issues of taxation than what I do with Senator Rapert.
Do you think it would have been better? I mean, let's back to the tax increases. I think it would have been better if they would have said, okay, listen, we've got to have X amount of dollars more from the people. I mean, I still would have hated this, but X amount of dollars more from the people. We got to have it. But we've found $50-60 million in cuts or savings that we're going to use for roads or whatever. So we found that, and we only need $30 million from the taxpayer. I mean, that would have at least been a little bit easier to swallow, but we didn't even have that conversation, it seems.
Oh, no, we didn't. We had that conversation back in 2013 when Beebe was the governor, and the bill moved along, and then it just suddenly disappeared and got squashed. When State Representative Mayberry brought it back up, I thought this is good, but it came up so late into the session that it didn't have a real chance to, I think, gain any kind of traction. That's the one that I've been watching all along and been hoping that they'll follow all along, but I don't think we're going to see it, Paul, and I think maybe you would agree with me on this. We won't see it until the present occupant that's in the governor's office has run his course as governor of the state.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. We're talking with Dave Elswick. I can't call him Mister. We're talking with Dave Elswick. He is the host of Dave's Elswick Show. You can hear him on 101.1 The Answer out of Little Rock every day, every weekday from 2 to 6, right, Dave? It's on your 4-hour program.
Yep, I'm a 4-hour program. We're on 2 to 6, and we do it every day. We have fun. Some days we don't even talk politics. For the most part, though, we talk politics, and we do a lot on local politics. And that kind of takes me out of what a lot of people like. Sometimes they'd rather talk about what's happening on the national circuit instead of what's happening right here in our own borders. And what happens right here in your own state has more effect on you than what happens in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the Stand Your Ground law that failed, and it did fail by one vote out of the Senate Judiciary Committee, where Republican Senator John Cooper, who's now being primaried by Dan Sullivan, voted against it, voted with Stephanie Flowers. Speaking of this, kind of encapsulate, what was your impression on that whole situation, all the way from Stephanie Flowers' meltdown, where she told Alan Clark to go to hell, to John Cooper's no vote, siding with the Democrats?
When I look at that, I still stand stunned. I was stunned that didn't pass. I think Stand Your Ground is a law in 33 states, so it's not like it's a hugely complicated or a hugely, one of those bills that people find hard to understand or anything. I look at it, and it seems to me we all have the God-given right to protect our property, our curtilage, and everything else. And when we're out in public, we have the right to, protect our own bodies and maybe even protect the bodies of fellow citizens. I didn't understand what the problem was. I didn't hear it directly from Cooper. I heard it from reliable people that I know who he told them that he voted against because his prosecutor told him to vote against it. I heard that the sheriffs, I heard that the Arkansas State Police, I heard that the prosecuting attorneys all were telling many people that we didn't need this bill because we already had this bill within our present laws. I say you can't have too many bills that protect the Second Amendment and protect people and give people the rights to protect themselves.
I completely agree. I completely agree with you, Dave. Towards the end of the session, there were throughout the session there were some divisions among Republicans, but that's not true when it came to the end of the session with the anti-sanctuary city bill. Now, you live in central Arkansas, and there were all of these rumors floating around that Little Rock was edging toward being a sanctuary city. So I think this was a highlight of some of the good that was done, don't you?
Well, look, I've been talking about what Little Rock has been doing under the four mayors of Sotola for the last two and a half years, and the issuance of ID cards and all kinds of things going on. And, you can look at a dog and call it an orange, but if it looks, it smells, it barks, it acts like a dog, it's a dog. And the bottom line was that's exactly what they were doing in the city, edging towards sanctuary status, and they're not saying it because they don't want to. It's not a matter of tipping people off. If people look at it, they see it. The bottom line is they're just they don't want to say it because it's such an incendiary word. But they are. They're moving towards being a sanctuary city. You got them. You got Eureka Springs. You got Fayetteville. All of those areas in this state are edging more and more towards sanctuary city status for illegal aliens, and we don't need that here in this state. Look, we know all the arguments. We know, the illegal immigrants, if we give them, ID, they think that the police are nice to them and the government's nice to them, and they're more apt to help us in investigations. If they're afraid that you're going to identify them and send them back home, they won't. Well, you know what? If they want to be American citizens, then they're going to identify wrongdoers. If they don't deserve to be American citizens.
We're talking to the sage of Arkansas Talk Radio, Dave Elswick. He's host of the Dave Elswick Show. You can hear him on Little Rock's 101.1 The Answer. Many of you do. We're broadcasting right now on 101.1 The Answer. Dave, you have been doing talk radio for a very long time, and you've been in Arkansas for a while as well, and you have a very unique perspective. You have seen Arkansas be an anomaly in terms of being a Democrat state dominated by Democrats, a blue state really in a sea of southern red compared to our neighbors. And then you saw what happened with Obama. You saw this transition. So from where we are today versus where we were, I would love to get your comments on seeing this transition and, where we need to go from here.
Well, I'll tell you. I think we are where we were when I was in Indiana at WIBC in Indianapolis. I went there to be a political reporter. I covered the State House, and then they moved me over into talk. And they went red in the mid-'90s. They went solidly red in the mid-'90s. But they had, at that point, they had themselves a Democrat governor. A lot of us remember when he was there in Indiana. It took them about 2 full sessions to really get their sea legs as far as Republicanism went. We've had now 2 full sessions with a large majority of Republicans here in this state. I believe starting in the next general session, we will start seeing that movement that we all have been hoping for from the conservative side of starting to see them cut back on government. Like I told you, I believe that it will take for the current occupant, who is of course Governor Hutchinson. He's kind of the transition guy, and he's there to. Whether he's wanting to do it or not, what he's doing is moving us towards when the conservatives will really take over. And I believe after the next election for governor, we'll have a governor who really wants to move towards real solid conservative principles, what you and I would call solid conservative principles. When we will actually see people not say we've got to, we got to have, if we take $46 million from over here to put it into a tax cut over here. We don't go looking for another $46 million we can raise in taxes so that we pay for the $46 million that we just gave to people. In other words, taking money out of their right pocket and putting it in their left pocket, and then they're taking that money out of their left pocket and putting it in their back pocket.
Yeah. No, that's a really I like your optimism there, and also honesty about where we are and how there is a lot more to do, and hopefully we will have. And I can sense people are getting bolder, but it just it's also a leadership issue, like you said, from the governor to the people in leadership. We've got to have people who are willing to. It seems like there's some who are wanting to promote the unity of the party, and it's really kind of a facade because the party in many ways is not unified. I mean, we are on some issues like the life, like the social issues, anti-illegal immigration. But gosh, when it comes to economic issues, it just seems like it's really hard to change that mentality. Like you said, if we got to have revenue neutral, and in Arkansas's case, we got tax increases coming,
Well, here's the key. We have a lot of people in the Republican Party who don't know what it means to be a Republican, to be honest with you. All you got to do is talk to them for 20 minutes, and you can figure that out, Paul. You talk to enough people in the capsules and know that they're there to be told basically what to do. They don't have a Hills being an understanding on the principles of republicanism.
That's very well said. I think that's where we'll leave it. Dave Elswick, it's always great to talk to you, my friend. I appreciate who you are, what you do, what you stand for. And thanks for giving us your impression of the session, sir.
Sure thing, Paul, anytime, but let's try to do it later in the day.
All right, let's do it. We'll tape it. We'll tape it, so or I'll come on your show. Okay, all right. Thanks,
That's
Dave.
good. We'll talk to you later.
Appreciate
Bye-bye.
it. Folks, we're gonna go to break here.